Welcome, Dr. Porter. He changed my life 4 years ago when I discovered this brain tap technology. It woke me up.
It's an awesome product.
It's an awesome product. So here we go. Let's learn about it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the science of light, sound, and vibration, but first let's talk about something called stress. Anybody feel any stress that was happening up here?
Yeah.
That happens all the time. So what I want to do is give you a little bit, everybody stand up for me for a minute. My background, just as you're standing, my background is I was brought up Catholic, so I have a program with the Pope. I have to have you stand and set, but we won't kneel, okay? So when you're standing, what I want you to do is take balance on one foot and do a circle with the other leg. While you're doing that, I want you to then write your name in the air. So you're doing the circle and you're writing your name, okay? And when you've done that, go ahead and sit down. Now, how many of you found that when you started to write your name, your circle went analog, like this? Okay. How many found when you were doing your circle, you couldn't remember how to spell your name? Your name kind of blanked out. Anybody have that happen? What happens under stress, and why it's so important that we have technologies like brain tap or mindfulness or some kind of energy intervention, is because our nervous system, unfortunately, the way we were trained as children, it's either on being logical or it's off being logical, or it's on being creative or off being creative when we have this whole brain. So imagine the world right now if we had a major crisis happening and half the world's computing power shut down. That's what happens in the human system under stress. And we need to keep the mind open and receptive. So we have to train the brain under stress to do that. So one of the things that I started doing back in the early 80s with a company called Light and Sound Research out of Scottsdale, Arizona, was we started looking at what happens. We were using biofeedback. There was no neurofeedback when I started. So when somebody says, did you go to school for neurology? No, because you have to be an MD to do it back then. It's not functional neurology like what we do today. So what we're talking about is, how does the nervous system respond to stress? Right now, especially over the last 3 years, we've all been bombarded with stress. Even if you didn't think you were, we can't go anywhere without seeing something about COVID or seeing people wearing masks, and we should be scared of everything. But I'm here to tell you that we all have a very powerful immune system. And it's more powerful than anything out there that they can throw at us. So what we have to do, when you look at people like Wim Hof, who can do breathing techniques, they can inject poison into his veins. He can do a breathing technique that he created, and the poison neutralizes. That tells us he's not an X-Men. He's not somebody in Hollywood. This is a regular guy that found out that he could do cryotherapy and really activate his brain. There you go.
I want to say I love his product. The 2 months I've been trying it, 3 months. I love this product. It's the best thing I ever bought. Go in the exhibit hall, buy it. And if not able today, on my website, there's a product page on biomedexpo.com. You click on product page, it's over there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm being underwritten by Dave. so as you do that, so you go ahead and click the thing. I'm going to show you some things that hopefully you're going to wake up your mind a little bit about what's going on, because I like to take things that were ancient traditions and make modern technology out of them. When you think about sunlight, everybody knows one of the best medicines we have is Dr. Sunshine. That's because every cell of your body has something called a chromophore. It actually absorbs light energy. It also absorbs sound energy. It also absorbs vibrational energy. You are an energy being. And by the time I'm done, hopefully you're going to understand this truth. The truth is that you are an electrical being or a spiritual being, a light being. Those aren't metaphysical concepts anymore. It's no longer on trial. You are not what you think you are, what we were told in school. You're not solid even. You're 99.9% of something else, information. That's why all these energy medicine practitioners over here, that's why they can affect your field. NIH today, right as we sit here today, didn't happen 20 years ago, but about 5 years ago, they started to develop conversations around the biosphere. This is our energy sphere. Used to be you'd have to go to a metaphysical conference to hear anybody talk about that. Now when I go to India, they talk about it all the time. But here in America, they don't. But we know we have this sphere of energy around us. Everyone in this room, you're sitting pretty much in everybody else's energy field. And your heart can be measured from up to 18 feet away. Your brain, of course, we need to put probes on it because it's very low energy, low voltage. But your heart is what controls the show. So as we talk today, a lot of what I'm going to share with you is what happens with the heart. Your heart has 40,000 specialized cells called neutrino cells. These control the show. This brain up here is like a Google tablet. It doesn't do anything. It's a slave machine. It basically keeps you going when you keep doing something else. 25% of the time when you're unconscious, that's when your subconscious takes over and does it. But 95% of all the time, it's taking care of you while you're taking care of everything else. You know, your heart keeps beating, your cells keep changing, all of these things. So everybody spends most of their time, I mean, I'd say almost 90% of their time working on things they have no control over and doesn't even influence, like neurofeedback. If you've ever tried it, I've never seen, and I put this challenge out to anybody here, you show me a study with neurofeedback where they've had any results 6 months after you did it. There isn't any. Magnetic resonant therapy, there's no study 3 to 6 months after it's done. They always go back to where they were because these are accidents that happen. Your body learns through experiences and our environment. As we're sitting here today, every one of you here, we're all sharing information that we don't even know about right now. We're sharing it at what they call biophotic exchange. That's what they called shedding, right? We started learning about it, but the reality is we were doing it before. When you are in the presence of other people, when Charlie Tremendous Jones said you're the sum total of the 5 people you hang around with all day or the 5 last books you read, that's because both of those things change up to 85% of your genetic code. Your DNA is changing while you're sitting here every 40 seconds. So I'm going to share with you why you need to do certain therapies and why I developed BrainTap was really kind of selfish. It was for me. My dad was a Silva instructor, and when he taught us Silva, I went from this idiot at school to being an honor roll student because my dad taught me to meditate. He taught me to go to 10 cycles, which is alpha. They call it level during Silva training. What happens when you go to alpha, nobody told you, was you get a gamma burst and you get a delta burst. Your whole brain lights up when you're sitting in alpha. Think of it like you're in the parking lot and you're in neutral. The brain collects energy at 10 hertz. 7.8 hertz, guess what? It does it again. 40 hertz, it does it again. The problem is these are frequencies that for whatever bizarre reason, nobody is making. This environment could be set to be in a frequency of 10 hertz while we're here learning. They've done studies on it called the Mozart effect, where they can play music at 10 hertz and your brain just becomes smarter. You don't learn anything new. It's just the environment that's changing. But when you're in a stress environment, if you have mold in your environment, there's a lot of toxins in our environment. These lights, I'm sure these aren't John Ott lights, that we're sitting under. So instead of having Dr. Sunshine, we get GE that's putting these out as cheaply as they can, and the hotel is not buying them based on health. They're buying them based on how much it costs. And guess what? These lights are transmitting information into our cells. That's why all the little gadgets over there that you can get tested for, where people are designing technology to offset the negative parts of our environment. So I'm not up here to tell you everything that works and doesn't work, but I just want to tell you, so you can do a cold plunge. This is because your nervous system works best under stress, but you also have to equal amount of recovery. Most people in the biohacking field that I've just recently been involved with, I didn't know I was a biohacker till, Dave Asprey coined the term, So, but when you do it, what happens is a lot of them are go, go, go all the time, and they think they can supplement. You can supplement, but you can't outthink a bad diet. You've got to have it all. You got to do the body, the mind. But my belief is, just so you know, is you got to eat right, you got to move and breathe, and you got to meditate. I don't care how you do it. Now I'm going to tell you right now, when we've studied, we've probably measured over 30,000 brains in the last 10 years. I've only had 2 people that were doing their own meditation that actually beat the BrainTap.
No way.
Yeah.
How many minutes a day we need according to you?
On BrainTap, what we did in India, one test we did in Ames Bhopal, which is one of our research partners, we just were published, and we did pranayama breathing that showed we could match the hemispheres. Just by doing a breathing technique, you can do the same thing as BrainTap. The problem was you had to do it 5 times a day. So most people who are 65 aren't going to do that 5 times a day. They're going to forget about it. So we said just do BrainTap 3 times a day and you got better results. But you can do it. Everything that we do with BrainTap you can do on your own. The problem is people don't want to do it. We live in a fast food society, right? We want to press a button and get a change.
Exactly.
So what we want to do is show you, so even like Corey Anderson, where he's using the brain tap during the plunge, and I was just at the CryoCon, which is a really cool event where everybody's freezing each other out with all these different devices. And the problem is that nobody really wants to get in that cold water. I don't care who you are. You're like, but what it does is, you love it? Yeah, great. So what happens, I have a friend, Dr. Brandon DeWeese, that sat in there for 22 minutes in a tub at 34-degree temperature.
Wow.
I mean, I don't know if he's alien or what, you know. I was in there for 5 minutes and I was praying to God that, you know, they'd get me out of there. But what happens when you get out, your nervous system goes, wow. You get all this endorphin releases, your body starts to regulate, because we know that under extreme conditions, if you can recover, it's not just the Marines that say that which doesn't kill you make you stronger. It's everything in your life.
You shock the system.
Yeah, you shock the system. So if you think of your life right now as a series of challenges, you're going to have a highly functioning, powerful immune system. But if you look at your life as a series of threats, and you know, we know those people now. They're wearing masks still, even though they've been proven to be false.
Right.
You know, there's something called the law of the lie, and this is what we're fighting in this while we're doing the biomed here, is to tell people there is a science out there. It's not making this stuff up. This is all proven with science now, that even though something's been proven to be false, some people will still believe it to be true because their belief system guides them, even though it's not true. You know,
Japan took the laws away. It's still people wearing the mask.
yeah. Well, they wear them here. When I was at the airport, I'm like, is something going on here I don't know about? You know, is somebody about to perform surgery? I actually was walking with a doctor at another event, and somebody in the hotel was wearing and he stopped her and he said, "Are you performing surgery?" And she said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, you're wearing a mask. I mean, what are you doing?" And they're not wearing that mask to protect them. They're wearing that mask to protect the person they're doing surgery on. So, I mean, there's a big difference there. So as we think about these things, go ahead and click it. When we think about our bodies, the bodies we have right now have not changed at all in 200,000 years. These bodies aren't evolving. We're born to be in the Serengeti, being chased by lions and all these other things. But let me tell you a little bit about what's happening to your body. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, how many people get a little tired, want to have some coffee or tea? They got me talking right at 2 o'clock. So here we go. What happens is your body drops in temperature no matter where you're at on the planet, 2 degrees at 2 o'clock every day. I don't care who you are, where you're at on the planet. That's your body recycling, because it's not Superman that gets the power from the sun. Your body does. Your cells do. Those frequencies of light from the sun are telling you, hey, it's time to reboot. So what do we do in the Serengeti at 2 o'clock? We're laying down taking a nap next to the zebra and thinking, thank God I outran that lion today. You know? But what do? We go to Starbucks, we get chocolate, we get sugar. We try to adjust our nervous system through our biological system. That'll work only for so long. And then you got to pay the piper. Because the biological system is slow. The electrical system is lightning fast. If you can get your brain to change to make the switches, you now have optimum health. And the quicker you can change your nervous system, in other words, and I'm going to show you some things that happened to me, because I'm not going to show you somebody else's, but I'm going to show you my slides in just a moment to show you what I'm talking about.
You say metabolism is slow.
Yes, everything. I'm going to show you all that. Now, when this guy was being chased by the saber-toothed tiger, he might have had a stressed out event 3 to 4 times a week is what they think. People have that now before breakfast, because they get up and they look at their phone. The average person looks at their phone 300 times a day.
We sleep with it.
Yep, and you sleep with it. And we did a study at BrainTap where we put a phone in another room. You couldn't even hear it. And we had them hooked up to EEG, and we started pinging their phone. Every time their phone was pinged, they had a cortical response.
No.
There was a quantum entanglement with that phone.
Wow.
So you don't even have to have the phone on you.
AI is running the brain.
Yeah, well, we don't know what's running our brain, right? If you knew that, we'd make $1 million or $1 billion, you know. Nobody knows what's really running our brain.
Work,
yeah. So go ahead. So this is how we can read the brain, and I'm going to go into more detail about it. But right now, as we remember, I told you the heart runs the show. 40,000 neutrino cells that think on their own, that have memories of their own. That all of this happens from the heart. The heart is the controller, not this. That's why we need to try to change this. Emotions run behavior, not logic.
Oh, okay.
You know, when you think about somebody who smokes or drinks or porn or whatever the addiction is, it's not the thing that they're doing that's the addiction. That's the problem people have. I used to write the programs for DUIs for the state of Arizona. And when we were teaching them, it's not the thing of doing, it's not the act of doing it that gives you the dopamine. It's the thought of doing it that gives you the dopamine.
Really?
So it's the anticipation. And I tell people, remember in college, if you went to college or high school and you were going to a party that night, you got all excited and giddy and you're all fired up and you're talking to your buddies about how you're going to get lucky if you're a guy. If you're a girl, you're going to find that magical guy. You know, whatever's going on. Or both. But then you get there and you go, this sucks. Because it didn't live up to your expectations. That's why Buddha said, all unhappiness stems from unfavorable comparisons. Our brain is constantly playing games with us. And it's up-regulating and down-regulating our nervous system all the time. We get excited. That's why sporting events, I stopped watching a lot of them because I'd get invested. And pretty soon I'm getting angry and I don't even know these people. I'm going, what the heck? What's going on? Because we get hijacked by emotions.
They're making all the money.
Yeah, they're making all the money. Go ahead and flick it. Now, this is how most people think you should meditate. Go to the mountains and relax. So remember I was telling you about Bhopal, India? When I was there, Dr. Varun, who I've done a lot of research with, he said to me when I first met him, and I said, this is a device that's going to help people meditate. He goes, you're in India. He says, everybody knows how to meditate here. And I said, I'll tell you what. You bring me 10 people that you think are top meditators, and then bring me people that have never meditated. And I'll show you that in one day I can teach my people to meditate better than yours. And we did. And he said, well, you're cheating. And I said, what do you mean I'm cheating? He goes, yeah, they just put on that machine and they're there.
Oh my God.
And I said, that's the point. If I take you to Hawaii, I can tell you about Hawaii all day, but if I take you there and show you rainbows and waterfalls, that's much better than me telling you about them.
It is.
It's the cliff notes.
Yeah. So what I told him was, I said, Varun, the gurus cheat. He said, what do you mean they cheat? I said, they do. I said, have you ever meditated to a candle? Anybody here ever did a candle meditation? They call it Jyoti meditation. Yeah. That candle flickers at 10 hertz frequency.
Oh.
Your eyes have more mitochondria than any other area by square centimeter than any other part of the body. The brain has the most mitochondria, but the eyes have the most condensed. What mitochondria does, among other things...
Slower.
Yeah.
You go too fast.
I got to get it all in here.
No, we got to get it all.
And then, so what happens is the eyes absorb light and they transmit light. So when you're looking at a candle flicker at 10 hertz, we also have an evoked potential, our brain. It can go from 0.05 to 100, meaning whatever's going on out here, the brain is going to have a resonant frequency to it. So when you're looking at a candle, your brain starts to mimic the candle's flickering, which is 10 hertz. If you've ever been on a romantic getaway and you started a fire and then you got lucky, has that ever happened to anybody in the room, or am I the only guy? This happens because as soon as you start producing alpha brainwave activity, you also produce acetylcholine, which is the feel good. It's the one you get when you fall in love. And so people start associating. I love when people go, I love the ocean. That's because the ocean has a 10 hertz evoked potential as well. When you're by the ocean, your brain literally sinks to the ocean waves. Just like a waterfall in your office or music you're playing. Your brain's always going to do that. So I said, they're cheating by looking at that candle. I said, you ever seen a yogi meditate in the mountains? He said, yeah. I said, well, they're cheating. What do you mean? They're sitting in an isochronic tone generator. It happens to be the Earth, but it's still an isochronic tone generator that generates 7.8 hertz frequency. It puts them into theta. Now, what does theta do? Theta produces GABA. GABA is a precursor to DMT. If you've not been reading up on plant-based medicine, then that's what makes you have these spiritual visions. You need that molecule available to you to actually visualize. That's what helps you to dream. All of these things, it's in every cell of your body right now. It's just going to be in an overabundant state once you get more theta going or gamma. Now, we did a study with David Rosenthal out of Dallas, Texas. We were doing a PSD study with a psilocybin in BrainTap, and we had a few of the vets that did not want to take a psilocybin because they felt like they would get addicted to it. So I said, Dave, Dr. Rosenthal, I said, let's map some brains while they're on a psilocybin. And what we found out was when you're on a psilocybin, you have a high degree of gamma activity, like an inordinate amount, like what a Buddhist adept would have when they're meditating. But you get it from the substance you took. So we mapped that, and now we have sessions on BrainTap that put you into gamma, and I get reports weekly of people saying they're having a psilocybin trips without a psilocybin. Because guess what? You are the psilocybin. Your brain produces all the interactions. That plant didn't do anything. Your body reacted to the plant. And that's what you saw, heard, and experienced. That's why a guru would tell you, what are you taking that plant for? You can do this on your own. But this is a shortcut, right? So, and I'm not against plant-based medicine. I think it's great in the right doses and with the right people. But it's all about, there's new technology now. That was the old way. And I had to tell him, I said, you know, I could have took a boat to India. How long would that take? But I took a jet plane. Right? So you can meditate all you want. And I'm going to tell you, we've had people that meditate and meditate and meditate, and they have their monkey mind going, and they actually stress out their brain. 99% of all people we scan that have been tested pre and post in their own meditation actually are doing more damage to their brain than helping it, because they've never been trained and they don't know what to think while they meditate. They think they're supposed to think nothing. I can tell you right now, you can't get to the nothing state without getting through the bullshit state. And when you close your eyes, what happens is everything you had in the back hopper is going to come flooding into your brain, and you've either got to deal with it or it goes back into the hopper. So you've got to have techniques to deal with those things. And that's why usually in the old days, you would find a guru and they would teach you and they would keep you on task and they would teach you breathing techniques and they would have you do exercises. How many people in here do yoga? Anybody ever done that? Did you know yoga was only created at first, and they have yoga therapy in India, which is really funny. The doctors actually prescribe different positions. It was designed to keep your brain awake while you meditated. Most people in America do yoga, then they get up and don't do yoga nidra. They'll tell you the most important pose in yoga is the corpse pose. Because that's when you get all the neuroplasticity. That's when you get all the dendrite connections. That's when your brain starts to really function. Under stress, your body doesn't build, it tears down. So you have to have recovery. So that's the thing. Yeah.
What is a corpse pose?
Corpse pose is just laying there, think nothing. You're just laying there, you know. I watched one this morning because I did a little yoga with YouTube because you can get it free there, right? So, and I always go, if I'm going to do one from YouTube, I always go to the end to see if they did the corpse pose. If they didn't, I don't watch. If they didn't do it, I don't even listen to them because they don't know what they're talking about. They never did any research. Right. You've got to have that rest because when you're moving your body, you're actually stressing out your brain. But it's a good way. You know, like sports is a good way to stress out the brain, but you still need recovery.
Doctor, meditation module in the headset?
Yes.
Yeah, we have 2,000 different ones in there.
Do you want to go?
Yeah, I want to just show the people that have never done brain tap. This is what happens. You put it on, your eyes are closed. The light actually is working with cranial nerve 2, so it's not the way you see. Your eyes are closed. There's only 8 LEDs. These are 470 nanometer light. And I do want to call bullshit on blue light because everybody's talking about how bad blue light is. And it is. When it's dirty blue light. If it's below usually around 750 nanometers and lower, it's going to hurt you. Green light is what we should have at night, but we don't have an LED that changes colors while they do it. But when you think about it, this is so much low-level light that you need it. When we did our study in Australia where we took coal miners, these are people that never see the light of day. Could you imagine having a job where you go to work in the dark, you actually work in the dark, and then you leave in the dark? That's what they would do. And they basically had terrible sleeping habits. So we used the BioStrap as our tool to measure their sleep. We improved their sleep in 3 weeks, and they did 3 times a day. Right before bed, they used this. Every one of our studies, and we have thousands of studies where it improved people's sleep. Now, about 3% of the people cannot do this at night because, especially if you're blue-eyed or green-eyed, you're going to bring in more light into the brain. Even though your eyes are closed, you're still going to bring in that light because your brain is not just attached to your brain. I mean, your eyes are not just attached to your brain. Your eyes are brain matter. So through something called biophotic exchange or photobiomodulation, what's happening is the cells will fill up. Remember those chromophores I was talking about? When that battery gets full, our body is a community. It says, I've got enough energy here, I'm going to push it out to you. And it keeps pushing that energy. And what it does from the eyes, it pushes it right back into the brain, into, most importantly, the retinal flashing will feed the executive function of the brain. And when we did our dementia study, which I'll mention here in a second, we found that was the part of the brain that wasn't functioning at peak for people in dementia. And we took everyone off the dementia scale in 6 weeks. Every person. It's in a bigger study right now at Seminole College, because what we showed was if you get energy, you can do it with lasers too if you have lasers, but we used brain tap. And what we showed in 6 weeks, we had a 39% neuroplastic change because we were feeding the brain energy. The brain needs that energy. So go ahead and, yeah, so this is me just so you know, this is me leaving on February 22nd, leaving New Bern, and I'm in pretty good shape, but then I fly to LA. Look what happened to my nervous system. From a 71 stress state up to 180 stress state. Green represents your parasympathetic system, yellow is your sympathetic, and red is your neurohormonal. So you can see it kind of went out of balance. Down below that 113 number, that's how quickly my nervous system would change. And I'm in the Goldilocks zone there, it's good. But as soon as I land, I'm double what it's supposed to be, 288, which means my nervous system is now sluggish, it's not working. Go ahead and click, and I'll show you what happened after I did my brain tap session the next morning. I get back up, it's back up to, and now the stress is lower than it was when I left New Bern. My stress is only 38, my parasympathetic is back where it's supposed to be for me, and I'm down to 61, so I'm even lower than I was. BrainTap did that in one session. You can see the timestamps because I left them up there. Go to the next one. So this is my brain. The reason that you have, quote, senior moments is either stress, and the brain shuts off, that part of your mechanism, or lack of blood flow, which is stress too. And it could be from diet, or it could be from lack of movement. There's a lot of reasons for that. But if the hippocampus doesn't have energy, it can transact information. Your memories are not stored in a file cabinet. Your memories are stored all over the place. In fact, one memory, if I ask you to remember your favorite memory, in order for you to recall that memory, you had to light up no less than 6 places in your brain. And they had to be reassembled so you could remember them. It's stored all over the place. So what happens under stress is you can't transact that information. And if the brain doesn't get that information in nanoseconds, it says that information is useless, and you start doing what's called neural pairing, which means you start losing those dendrite connections. Even though the information's there, I tell people it's like, most of you have probably had a computer that went down, your hard drive, you couldn't get to information, you took it to some expert and you said, all my information's in my life's on this hard drive, can you get it? That information's there, but the file allocation table, which accesses it, isn't. So they have to rebuild that. That's what the elderly need right now. They need to rebuild their file allocation table. You have a perfect memory. Every person has a perfect memory. It's the recall system that needs to be improved. And once you build the recall system, like my dad, when he used to do the Silva classes, he'd have 150 people in the room, and when we did the introductions, you would say your name and your favorite animal. And then throughout the whole seminar, somebody back in the back row would say, they'd raise their hand and he'd say, okay, you're Beth and your favorite animal is a polar bear or whatever. And he knew everybody's, because he had a photographic memory because he practiced it. And he taught us that. But you have to keep practicing it. So it's not reasonable. Nobody's going to do that. But what you can do is you can have a great memory for your pleasant memories. You can learn how to distort and change and delete those negative memories and get your brain working more efficiently. Unless your job is to be a memory expert, which most people it isn't. So here's my brain before. It's 100%. Which should be, right? I run a business, that's what I do. My delta's only at 32, I've got a little bit low energy. When I did this scan was right before I got on the airplane, so when I thought about doing this, so it wasn't like I was in my perfect environment. But what happened when I flew, knocked it down 60 points. And I'm in the negative zone right now. And then my brain activity kind of went up a little bit, which is kind of unusual, but it might just be because I was excited to see what my brain looked like while I was doing the scan. Go ahead and this is what happened after my scan. The next morning when I did my brain tap, 100% again. The best brainwave, by the way, is about 45% beta and 30% alpha, which would be mine if I was home for 3 or 4 days and I did a scan. Because that's what brain tap's training you to do. And the reason you need that is you need to be able to be reactive and you need to be creative. If you have too much alpha and not enough beta, you're hyperactive. If you have too much beta and not enough alpha, then you become stressed. I could look at somebody's brainwave patterns and tell you about yourself. A lot of times people go, are you psychic or something? No, I've just seen thousands of these brain scans. And this is only one evaluation. If we were really doing hemispheric change, we'd use something like the WAVI or something like that would get more data. So go ahead and go to the next one. So this is my neurohormonal system. I was 100 when I left New Bern, and I was 33 when I arrived in LA. That's not very good. This test right here is what prompted the Brazilian government to fund a study in Brazil. We had I'm going there on April 10th to get the award from 3 different universities because we tested BrainTap against opioids and fibromyalgia in women, 55 plus, and we beat it in all 3 studies. Because you have the most powerful pharmacy on earth. It's not Walgreens, it's not Walmart, it's your human brain. You can release 30,000 different neurochemicals with a simple thought. We just got to get the right thoughts, the right activities, the right function, and your brain will light up and do the work for you. The problem is if you think you're doing it and you're so intent on doing it, your stress is not going to change it. Your stress is actually going to make it worse. So you can see my metabolism, which Dave asked about earlier. See, I was at 259. I was bringing in 97 units of energy and burning 162. Now, when I get to it went down from 259 all the way down to 85. This is what stress can do to your body. That's what I'm trying to show you. This is just one stressful event. So go ahead and click it. So this is what happened when I landed. So you can see my body became an energy processor right afterwards. So I went right back to 100. My metabolism went up to 545.
In just one session.
In just one session. Now, you have to keep, your nervous system is going to change every 72 hours. So I'm not saying this is permanent. You know, just like I showed here, if I stopped doing brain tap and I kept flying around the country like I do, I'm going to look like crap. I'm going to age even faster. I'm only 26 years old. You know, so, you know, these things happen to you, you know. So I think what happened to me was when I was younger, because my dad used to have me help him do his Silva classes, and I used to try to act and look older. Now I want to act and look younger. So I got to change my brain. You know, when you're 24 years old and everybody in the crowd is, you know, twice your age, you kind of get a complex about that. So this is where my body right now, when I left New Bern, was operating like a 31-year-old. Now, how did we get that number? We get that number from the thousands of scans we've done and other people have done using this. We have 3,000 clinics out there with BrainTap. So they help to build this database. So if somebody were to look at my scan before, in an average 31-year-old, I would be like a 31-year-old, even though I'm actually 61. So when you look at my coherence of my heart, that's 100%. That's not just heart rate variability. We're actually measuring communication between the three brains that we operate in all the time. We have our heart brain, we have our gut brain, which I think is our second brain. This is our third brain, because it was the third one to be evolved and to do its thing. But this is the one that we think with and can get us into a lot of trouble, right? So what happened after I was flying, I went back up to being a 53-year-old. My coherence went down to 32. That's terrible. But when I got up the next morning, did my session at 7:50 in the morning, back up to 100%, back to being a 31-year-old. So what I'm trying to show you is you got to do something every day. You're not going to find a magic pill over here. You've got to do some kind of practice, something that's going to get you back on track, and you've got to be able to measure it. Because if you're not measuring, guess what? You get out of control. So you get off track, and if you've never done anything like boating and you're looking at the shore, as long as you're looking at the shore and you're driving your boat, you'll get there. But as soon as you take your eye off and you're just letting the boat kind of go where it goes, you might think you're going across the lake, but you end up over here 40 or 50, 100 yards away from where you wanted to go because you weren't looking at where you were going. You got to keep pointing your direction, pointing and steering it where you want to go. So this is the one down below. See where it says 93%? I'm 63% better than someone my age. And, you know, and I've been doing this a long time. My mother got into this because she had 6 boys and 3 girls, and we were all spazzes. You know, and so the doctor says, we got to put these guys on Ritalin. My mother said, no way. And we were fortunate. We grew up in Battle Creek, Michigan. The very first health food store in the world was in Battle Creek, Michigan. That's where Dr. Kellogg was. So our fun, very different than my friends, we'd all pile up in the station wagon, go to the health food store, and we'd go get whatever candy was there. It wasn't really candy. It didn't taste very good, but we thought it did because we didn't get regular candy. We didn't do dyes. We didn't do sugar. All the things that we now know are bad for people, and I can't believe still in school systems they have soda machines and things like that. But if you came to my house, you didn't really want to stay for dinner. You know, we always liked going over to our friend's house because then we'd get the bad stuff. You know, we were kind of doing our thing. But at home, we ate really healthy. In fact, when I graduated, Michael, who's over there, my brother, he jokingly, because I said I was going to replace Ewell Gibbons in the Grape Nuts commercials, for people who know who Ewell Gibbons is, because I was really into nutrition during high school, and I would bring my own lunches and eat my own food and do all those things because I wanted it for sports. And then they also said I was going to replace you. I was going to be the next Bruce Jenner. So my friends said, when are you going to get your sex change? You know, that knew me there, and I said no. But those guys were my heroes back then. But when you look at what happened when I flew, you can see up top, that's all the 4 we did before. The only only one that was vegetative regulation is actually the autonomic nervous system. So when we look at what happened when I flew, I went from 93 to 35. So in our clinic, if you were to come into my place in New Bern, North Carolina, I would do a baseline scan with you. When that number gets to 80, when you come in, then I know I'm done working with you in the clinic. I can give you at-home programs. I can tell you, I can count on one hand how many people, except for biohackers, when we go to the biohacking conference, they blow me away. They're really good. I mean, their bodies are in great shape. They take care of themselves. But if you're not measuring, monitoring, and taking care of yourself on a daily basis, you'll get out of control, and you won't even realize it. And the more dysregulated you are, here's a sign of dysregulation as a woman. When you, at 2 o'clock in the morning, you also get an increase in temperature 2 degrees. But if you're dysregulated, that can go as high as 5 degrees. Guess what happens at 5 degrees? You start sweating. You start having a fever. That wasn't caused because you were in menopause, because we have thousands of people using BrainTap that don't have those symptoms. It's a problem because you're dysregulated neurologically. You know, most of these problems we have are third world problems. They're not first world problems. You know, these are things we created from our lifestyle, in other words, not from our, you know, in what I like to tell people, especially about aging, people go, as you age, you know, we lose our memory. No, we don't. I haven't read of any ancient culture that says, let's put all of the wisdom of the tribe with the youngers. What do they dig them to the elders? That must mean that our brains were designed to stay highly functioning until we passed on. And we've proven that. We've done studies with 100-year-old people and improved their brain 19%. Because brains can learn at any age. There's no expiration date on your brain. Just like your liver that can rebuild itself, guess what? Your brain can do the same thing. You can't rebuild the neurons that you had, but guess what? You have neurogenesis. Your brain can learn today. All we have to do is get one new thought in your brain, and a constellation of activities happen in your brain, and you have to rewire yourself to get one new thought in. So think about it. If today, in every lecture, you got one thought, your whole brain is rewired. That's why it's so great to be in these environments. To get just when I'm sitting in a talk, I'm just thinking, what's that one thought? Give me one thing that I've never heard before, never experienced before, never thought about before, because now I know a constellation of changes are going to happen in my brain. I'm going to get this neuro rush. I'm going to get the chills. I'm going to, you know, those kind of things happen because the brain goes, all right, we've arrived. Something new is here and present. And when the brain thinks that you're doing the same thing every day, the brain doesn't like that. In fact, the worst thing you can do for brain function is do the same thing every day. You know, you got to mix it up. Now, I do some routines that are the same every day, but I'm mixing it up what I'm doing during that time because the brain doesn't like that. So you can see after I was done, it went right back up. And the part of my brain that wasn't regulating correctly, now it's at 99%. So usually I'm 100% across the board, but sometimes, you know, you're not going to measure because some days, you know, especially I fly American, so it's like a crapshoot. It's like going to the lottery. You know, if you're going to get where you want to go, you know, when you buy the ticket. Go ahead. So when people are wondering about this device, by the way, Dr. Varun and I, we just got an award in India, a prestigious award as I think it's something like Best Research of the Year award, but they really gave it to the NeuroCheck because that's what did the studies, and we've done so many studies on Ayurvedic kind of medicine that they really can't measure. In NIH, which has two divisions, there's the pill division, right, that they don't care about results. They just want to sell more product and get the job at the pharmacy. And then there's the other division, which is the natural health division, which I'm surprised more people in the biohacking field don't go and present to them. We presented over the last 3 years, and we met the president of that division, which is the natural medicine division. And she's actually helping our science officer, who's Francisco Cedral, Dr. Cedral. There's a $3 million grant that they're writing to help NeuroCheck become the standard of measurement for any alternative medicine practice. Wow. Because we can measure it. We did it with everything at their event. We said, bring them all over here. We'll show you. We showed them things. This works. This doesn't work. Or it might not work for this. It might not be changing the nervous system. If it doesn't change the nervous system, then we can't measure it. But if it does move the nervous system, we can measure it. And now they're really open to these things. You know, and research is out there right now. And there's a lot of money out there to do research. There's a group out there anyway that doesn't seem to be in the mainstream media that really wants you to heal and be well. There's another group that doesn't give a care. You know, they just want you to buy their pills and, you know, they're a fast food nation. So this is the pilot we did with Dr. Kelly Miller, and he actually wrote a book about it called Saving Your Brain. And we took women 55 to 65 years old. They all had to be diagnosed by their medical doctor with dementia to be in the study. During that study, we only had them do brain tap 3 times a day. The reason for 3 times a day is in the morning when you wake up, if we were in ancient times, we wouldn't wake up to an alarm clock. That would be no. And if you're waking up to an alarm clock today, I'm going to say that's the number one thing you can do to help your nervous system. Stop it. Change it from your alarm to a piece of music, maybe like some favorite classical music or something that's going to stir your awakening, but not, when you shock your system, you're chasing that nervous system now all day because the cortisol and the adrenaline, the norepinephrine, all that, it's just going to spike too much. You want a little bit of that. So what we do is we have sessions that trigger SMR, which is sensory motor rhythm training. As we get better looking and more intelligent with age, something happens to this brainwave, okay? So we're all going that way. When people say they lose their balance as they get older, we all go, they fall, they break their hip or whatever. Could be something to do with physical exercise, but we proved it's something to do with the brain. Because guess what moves those muscles, that moves those bones, that does all those other things? It's the brain. The muscles don't do it. The muscles don't do anything. So you can lift weights all you want. If you don't fix your brain, it's not going to fix your muscles. What we showed was we beat out people exercising for balance, hands down, by them doing SMR training every day for 6 weeks. It's just a 10-minute session. It upregulates the nervous system. And what we tell people is if you're going to set your alarm, set it to some beautiful music, wake up, reach over, grab your brain tap, and do your 10-minute session. Because the average American hits their snooze button 3 times. So somebody's hitting mine 3 times, because I've never used an alarm clock since I was a kid. My dad taught us, in Silva, you learn sleep control and wake control. I just picture when I want to wake up, and my brain wakes me up. I still remember my son, when he was younger, he goes, does Dad ever sleep? He's always up when I go to sleep, and he's up when I wake up. No, I function best on 6.5 hours sleep. But I don't use an alarm clock. And the problem I have is even if I fly across the country, I'm still up at my time when I would wake up in New Bern until I'm here like 3 days. And then my body adjusts, even though I'm doing all these other things. And that's because light triggers these things. If you don't get to bed before 10 o'clock at night, you're not making enough melatonin. Because every hour before 12 is worth 2 hours after 12 to produce melatonin. If you don't sleep before 2 o'clock at night, forget it. You're not even making melatonin. And every cell of your body needs it. You don't just need it for sleep. You need melatonin all the time. So, there's a lot of, some people grab onto one piece of research like blue light or whatever, and they think this is the end of it all. No. If we didn't have blue light on our planet, we'd all have depression like you wouldn't believe. We need blue light. When I see a biohacker wearing their glasses during the day, I'm looking at somebody who's a time bomb for depression. Because they're blocking, your body needs that until about 6 o'clock at night. Then you can put those glasses on if you're in front of a computer or television. But if you're not, you need the light to tell your brain what you're going to do next. I don't care if you're selling those lenses or not. That's the way it works. So, your body, I believe in going back to nature as much as possible. What can we do that doesn't cost us anything, that's out there? But when you can't, you've got to find other ways to do it. Next. So this is a study that I thought was relevant for, especially being a biomed conference. We did a study in Michigan with concussions. And what we thought with Dr. Arkefeld, he was the school doctor. So any kid during the year 2020, which wasn't very many because it was a COVID year, but what we did was every other person at the end of their treatment, everybody got treatment, but at the end of their treatment, 50% of them got brain tap. The group that got brain tap were between 30 and 70% better 1 year later. 1 year, not right after, 1 year later, without any that was a 1 year washout. With the study we did before, the dementia study, 6 months later they had about 42% neuroplasticity. So they actually got better without doing it. Because once the brain regulates, it likes that feeling. And it will keep doing it. So think about like training. Now, somebody asked me once, do I use brain tap? Of course, I do it every day. And they go, is it addictive? I said, I don't know. I've been doing it since 1986. So you got to figure out, some things you want to be addicted to, some things you don't. One thing I tell people, if you live on Gilligan's Island and your only decision is Ginger or Mary Ann, then you don't have to do this. But if you have other decisions to make, you better start doing something. It doesn't have to be brain tap, but you got to do something to downregulate your nervous system, reboot the system, teach it to relax. So when I told earlier that, and this is something when I was interviewing Dave Asprey for my Brain Summit, this was 3 years ago, and I didn't even know this was a thing. He said, "Have you ever heard of biophotic exchange?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, he's been reading this paper, and it was talking about how the cells of the body, of course, when the cells divide, there's 1,100 nanometer light that broadcast. That's the information from that cell dividing into two cells. If you don't have mitochondrial energy, guess what? You don't get that same exchange, that biophotic exchange. But every 40 seconds, every DNA pair in your body changes. Every 40 seconds. And most of it is based on your environment, meaning where you're at in space and time, because that's what we had to be most concerned with. Secondly, it's what you put into your body. Thirdly, it's what you think about all those things. So this is, when you're not doing anything, your subconscious is still monitoring your environment, making changes for you, adapting your nervous system, preparing you for success or failure. Your best self shows up if you prepared and planned, but if you didn't, guess what? That's why we've all had experiences, unless I'm the only one, where you got mad at somebody you loved, and then afterwards you went, "Oh, geez, I wish I'd have done something different." But the obligata got involved, and all of a sudden you got hijacked. Your emotions took over because emotion drives behavior. So you got to plan. One of my favorite sayings, and I put this in my first book, Awaken the Genius, where I said, you get what you rehearse in life, not what you intend. That's why in war, and I'm not for war or against it. I think it's useless, but that's the way it works. But if they didn't plan, if they didn't treat them so poorly during boot camp, there's a movie on YouTube you can watch, How to Make a Marine. And my great-great-grandfather started the Marines, so the David Dixon Porter. And so when you think about the Marines, how do they get somebody who's perfectly sane out of high school to become a crazy person that will actually run after people and shoot them and kill them? That takes a lot of persuasion. It takes 10 weeks. If it took 9 weeks, guess what? They'd be doing it in 9 weeks. If it took 8 weeks, they'd be doing it in 8 weeks. If it took 11 weeks, they'd be doing it in 11 weeks. They want people to fail because they're looking for the people that it's a past failure all the way through. Like the Navy SEALs. The Navy SEALs, they want you to fail because they'd rather have you fail during the practice, the rehearsal, than in the real thing. They're trying to break them. Now in our life, what people always say is, I don't want the stress, I want my life to be less stressful. That's the worst thing you should want. What you should want is the strength, the character, the fortitude to handle anything. In fact, I had to get my wife a shirt that I saw in this magazine. It said, God will only give you what you can handle. Apparently God thinks I'm a badass. And I said, because she has to go behind me, and pick up everything, while I'm running around. So you need to have that support system there. But somebody says to me, you must be really stressed. I don't feel stressed ever. I'm excited. I'm the kind of guy, let's say we're playing pool or something like that, if we're just playing for fun, you might beat me. We put $1 on it. That's what I like. I'm very competitive. That's the way it works. I had a brother I had 5 brothers, so he could beat me all day long if we were playing for money, and he was out of work, and I just put a can of soup on it, I'd win all night long. He couldn't beat me for a can of soup because he would crumble under that. But you got to practice that way. You should never think about, ask God for the strength or whatever your higher power is, because you have it within you. You have the power. It's spoken like that all over the Bible if you follow that. You have the power. The power is outside of you. You got to activate it, but it's got to be first a thought before it becomes a thing. And if you're thinking all day long, I want my life to be less stressful, your brain sets you up like you're a little meek person that can't handle it. You're infinite beings with potential you've not even dreamed of. Wouldn't even know that one of my friends, Bob Harris, he was Jack Canfield's, one of his top trainers. And they wrote that Jack and him went to visit this woman down in Florida because she was 93 years old. She picked the car up off her grandson. And she became a recluse after it. And so they were wondering, what's going on? Why did this woman become a recluse? So they get in to see her, and it's Jack Canfield, so they get in to see her, and they're writing the stories about chicken soup for the soul and all that. And so when they get in there, they said, what's going on? And so you saved your grandson's life, and you're 93 years old, you're 95 now. They said, you haven't really went out of your house since you did it. She goes, I'm embarrassed. What? You're embarrassed? You saved your grandson. She goes, I did that at 93. I wasted my life. What could I have done with my life had I had done something if I knew I had this potential within me? So all of you in this room or listening online, I'm telling you right now, you have the potential within you. Stop pretending you're something you're not. The word you man means God man. It doesn't mean, people go, I'm just human. That's right. I expect more out of you. You know, you are God man. It doesn't mean woman or whatever. You want to talk about that. So here's the Ultra Week. You can look up the sightings here. And if anybody wants this PowerPoint, just stop by the booth and give them your email, and we'll send you the PowerPoint, because the references are on the slides. So you can go research it for yourself. This one blew me away. Go ahead, next. So this is a study. This is the first study we presented to NIH. I think is important here because people need to have an experience. When I used to write the programs for DWIs in Arizona, I was a second-time offenders. The first time people thought maybe it's an accident, but you get caught twice, you got a problem, right? God's telling you something, or your divine spark is saying, hey, you need some help. And so we had to do some therapy. And so what they need an experience. They need something that visceral. So what we did with this study was, and anybody who does the sessions here this weekend, you're going to be part of this study, because now it's up to over 1,000 people. And what we found was when people do a pre and post first time without ever doing brain tap, the average stress reduction from that one event is a 38.5% reduction in stress. A 23.4% neurological improvement across the board just from one session. And then what we know is that if you do that at least 3 times a week, because every 72 hours your nervous system is going to reboot. So that's the minimum you need to do something. That's why when people go, how often should you work out? Well, you should work out. You could work out every day, but you only work out certain muscles every 72 hours. Because that's what the body needs to recover. And that recovery is much more important than most people think. So what we found was that became their baseline a month later. So we don't only show you what happens now, but what happens down the road. Now, once you get to a certain level, it's kind of like an airplane. You're up in the air, you're flying. You can't move it that much after that, unless something like what I showed you, what happened to me. The nice thing with me is I've done it so long that my body bounces back right away. If you've never practiced, your body can't bounce back like that because it has no memory of that. Your body is giving you exactly what you predict it to do 100% of the time. It's proving you right, in other words, 100% of the time. If you wake up and go, I'm getting old, then your body goes, okay, we can do that. We can accelerate that. There's actually been studies done when I know people, because we used to have weight loss clinics with my franchise, and they would say, all I have to do is walk by the candy and I gain weight. Well, you know why that happens? It's true. They do, because one stressful event is equal to a candy bar. Your liver produces more sugar than a Snickers every time you have a stressful event. So if it's stressful for you to walk by the candy, guess what? You do gain weight just walking by the candy aisle. Because that sugar, your body doesn't care if that sugar came from a candy bar or came from your liver. It's going to have to encapsulate it with fat, save you from toxemia, and put it in places you don't want it. Right? If the fat would go where you want it, that'd be nice. But it goes to the adipose tissue, right? And so you get all this, and then that becomes a living, breathing organism. They now know that fat, visceral fat, actually is like a thinking brain. It causes you to act that way. Because it basically wants to survive. Every cell of your body is independent. It works as a community, but fat is outside of that. So it's almost like when people go, I feel like I'm possessed. You are. Get the fat out. You've got to do something. And there's a lot of ways to do that. I'm not here to teach you that, but we got to do that. So next. So I already talked about the Mozart effect. And then when we talk about the thing, when COVID hit, I started getting on television and radio all the time talking about psychoimmunology. And most people don't know this, and they're not talking about it online, but the worst thing you can do for your immune system is be fearful. Number one, it shuts down all the systems, neurological systems of the body. Because it's not just fight or flight. We've all heard of that. There's the freeze response. Every animal plays dead. When you play dead, the nervous system wants to shut off. And if you interrupt the flow, there's something called the flow state. And when people are in the flow, everything's functioning great. They're thinking good. They're happy. They're wonderful. Time seems suspended. But when you're in fear and stress and anxiety, time slows down. The body is interrupted. The endocrine system just keeps shutting down. What happens is eventually, it's kind of like Pavlov and his dogs. Has everybody heard that story? Pavlov rings the bell and the dogs salivate. Most people don't know the end of the story because there's more to that story. When they kept observing the dogs, And the guards kept feeding the dogs. And pretty soon the dogs started salivating when the guard would open the door. They didn't have to ring the door. They didn't have to ring the bell. He was just opening the door to ring the bell. Then they started salivating when the guard would walk down the hall to open the door. Then they said that it's over. We're going to start feeding them at 9 o'clock. The dogs kept salivating at 6 in the morning. Guess what happens at work when people have that candy jar? And they walk by Betty's desk and she's all happy and they have some candy. They get conditioned. And then when Betty goes on a diet, they go, Betty, what's wrong, man? Where's my Twitzel? Where's my candy? You know, you probably heard the expression, the crab syndrome. Has anybody heard of that? I used to have offices in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and when they go out hunting crabs, if you got one crab in the bucket, you had to put a cover over it. But if you had 2 crabs, you didn't have to anymore, because the one crab would always drag the other one down. So what we say in psychology is, if you're around a group of people that are always dragging you down, what I call energy vampires, we have friends or people that we know for our life, and they walk in the room, it gets a little darker. Those are energy vampires. They feel good when they leave. They go, oh, it's so great meeting you. I feel so good. And you go, man, I feel like shit. What happened? Well, they robbed you of your energy. You want gainers in your life, not drainers. That's a big thing with psychoimmunology. That's what's happening right now in our society. We have too many drainers. They're looking for somebody else. They get up in the morning and go, what's the weather like? I wonder how I'm going to feel today. No, make your own frickin' weather. I grew up in Michigan. We knew what the weather was going to be. It's going to be rainy, cloudy, and depressing. That's the way we grew up. We didn't have any expectation. We're having a picnic on Sunday. Well, there's a 50-50 chance of that. If you're in California, well, at least not until a couple months ago, right? But usually, when I lived in San Francisco, if I planned something on Sunday, it was going to happen outside. It was going to be beautiful unless it was January. Then you may be iffy. But we have to control our own environment. Everything is always sunshine. Your depression or compression, as I like to call it, because depression is nothing more than you going inside, finding the answer that you don't like, and not willing to come out and use it. And somebody says, and this is just an example. I know it probably has never happened to anybody here. But let's say you're in a relationship and everybody's telling you how terrible this guy is. And you're going, oh, he's so lovely. I like the way he just folds his underwear or whatever. And you're in love with him. And they go, no, he's a bad guy. And then finally you find out he's a bad guy. And you tell him, I can't believe you didn't tell me. What do you mean? I told you every time we were together, separate from him. I was telling you about him, but you didn't listen because we have myopic thinking. We have our own perception of reality. Has it ever happened to anybody here where you're in the kitchen and you say, where's the salt shaker? And your husband or wife is in the other room, say, it's right there over the sink. And you go, no, it isn't. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. Finally, they walk out and they go, right here it is. Right? In psychology, we call that a stigmata. It means it's after what Jesus said, you can't see the sin in another with a stick in your eye. But the reality is that our brain, right now, as you're looking at me, some of you aren't rendering my hair right now. Because when you're looking out with your eyes, you're only rendering about 20% of reality in reality basis. You're making up the rest because we're bringing in about 2,000 pieces of information through our eyes, but our brain is actually feeding our brain 10 million pieces of information every second. So we're only gathering 2,000, but we're feeding 10 million. We're making this all up, and neuroscience will tell us we render everything but 10% on each side of our vision. We build all this out. That's why we couldn't see the salt shaker. If you were the person, you didn't render the salt shaker. And if your belief was, I don't know where the salt shaker is, or where the hell they put the salt shaker, and you go out there, the brain will make it so you miss that. I'm just bringing that up because there's a lot of opportunities in life that happen to people, and because of their belief system, they don't render the opportunity. So you've got to be open to infinite possibilities. Go ahead. Oh, this is Kansas City Sport, which is, we're in a lot of the professional sports teams. In fact, almost all of them, because we have doctors that use BrainTap with them. But this was put in, we did a test with the soccer team in Kansas City, and what we showed them was, in a professional environment, you should be able to do their workout, do their HRV before their workout, do an HRV 4 hours after, and it should match what they started with. So we had them do that, and yeah, it did. These are professional athletes. But what we showed them was, if you do BrainTap, just like I showed you how mine was better than it was before I took the flight, we showed them with all the athletes that 20 minutes of brain tap is better than 4 hours. And then they had the rest of the night with energy. And then they put in this 20-station brain tapping room in their recovery room in Kansas City Sport, which is a professional soccer team. And the reason I bring that up is each of you, if you can do it in your job, that's even better around 2 o'clock, but at least do something right when you get home, because your family deserves the best you, not the stressed you. There's a big difference there. So you can wake up and you actually get the same energy you had in the morning, but you get it at night. Now you can be present for your family, present for your relationship, present for what you're doing. That's the key to brain health, why we call it brain fitness. So this is the study that we did with Seminole College, and we did help them win the national championship 3 years in a row. These are the women. These were top-notch women athletes. We were able to improve their alpha score by 90%. Now, the biggest improvement we liked about this study was over the 3 years we keep measuring them and what's going on. They have the highest GPA in the school. If you go to Seminole College website today, you'll see a page about BrainTap, because they use BrainTap as a recruitment tool for the college. Because they say, we don't just have you come to school, we're going to help you with your mental wellness. We're going to help you with your grades. Because again, if you can get your brain functioning right, you're smarter. If you're stressed out, you're not. So go ahead and just flip through this. Right now, as we're sitting here, there's 12 different universities doing studies on BrainTap right now, 7 continents. Because this is something we need, because it's not a pill, a potion, or something that you have to prescribe. This is something that you can learn to do. You can even use the app. That study that I talked about in Brazil, that was done with just our app.
Not even the headset.
Not even the headset.
Wow.
And the reason we're going there is we're going to do it with the headset, because I know when you add light, people go, why do you have light? Well, when you add light, you add 30% more brain function to your meditation. I can prove it to everybody in this room. When you close your eyes, you shut down at least 30% of your brain every time. The only people that don't is if you're doing the breath techniques or you're doing the yoga before. I mean, there are people that have beat BrainTap, very few, but they're there. The reason is because they don't know how to keep energy in the brain. The brain is an energy hog. It uses 25% of all the energy resources of the body. If you give it a chance to rest, it's going to rest. It's lazy. It wants to do everything minimally. So, but just like our muscles, if you've ever known anybody that really works out, if they don't get to work out, they become angry and upset. They become like an addict. They want to feel that burn. They want to get those endolupins and all those brain chemicals going so that they can feel good again. Because, you know, I have a brother-in-law that was Mr. Idaho, and if he didn't get to work out, we're like, just pick up some furniture, Jeff. You know, get over it, because he wanted that buzz. And that's what we have to do. We have to get to a point where we crave doing things that are good for our body instead of doing things that are against our body's natural nature. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I'm going to be here the rest of the day. We'll be over at our booth. If you haven't tried BrainTap, I'm going to encourage you to come over and try it. It's a 10-minute little process. You'll be able to see. And if you're a medical practitioner, or if they have time, there's not as many people here, so we might be able to see everybody. But they can do a pre and post scan, because we have the equipment over there that can show your nervous system now and your nervous system later. And if you're the person sitting there going, I don't know, mine is bad, usually the people that thinks theirs is good is the ones that are bad, and the ones that think they're bad are good. So we won't know until we do the test. So I want to thank you for spending some time with me.